Hello, and you find me driving down single track country lanes. I'm actually going to take you to a favourite spot of mine. It's on the coast and it's a beautiful little cove, but it has a very dark history and past to it, and it's surrounded by a little bit of folklore and legend. I'm going to tell you all about it because it rivals anything Hollywood could make or actually give us as a story. So this story involves pirates, smuggling, wrecking, dastardly deeds, murder, and everything that you can imagine a pirate would get up to. This pirate started life as a Danish seaman, but he quickly gained a reputation of the cruel Coppinger, and he plied his trade around the North Cornish and North Devon coastlines, particularly in the Heartland area. So Coppinger himself was the victim of wreckers, and when his boat was brought ashore by foul means, his crew, his boat, and indeed everybody on the boat found themselves dashed against the rocks, and it was a fight for survival. Any of the survivors that came to shore, the wreckers would finish them off, and there's that old saying, dead men tell no tales. But for Coppinger, he actually escaped, and what happened to him was he found a farmer's horse in the area, got onto the horse, and it made its way back to the farm. When the farmer and the rest of the mob that was wrecking and taking all the stuff away from the shoreline from the boat they brought in on the rocks made his way home, he took pity on Coppinger and took him into his home. He then allowed him to stay in his home and help around the farm. So the farmer had a daughter, and as you can imagine, Coppinger and the daughter sparked a relationship and then ended up marrying. But by this point, Coppinger was showing his true traits. He was a drinker, he used to steal, he was rowdy and got into a lot of trouble. And then the unfortunate farmer perished himself, he died, and the widow, you would think in today's age, she would obviously have sole rights to the properties and the goings on of the farm. But back in those days, Coppinger took the lead. And he was a vile, drunken bully to these two women, and indeed gave them a very, very miserable life. By now, he was also plying the trade which he was a victim of. He was wrecking. He was engaged in acts of piracy, and he was under total suspicion within the community. The excise men were always on his tail. In typical Hollywood fashion, he was always just one step ahead of the excise men when they were trying to apprehend him. Now, smuggling, piracy and wrecking all came with heavy penalties, and he would do everything not to get caught. There is a story of one unlucky excise man who was beheaded on the gunwales of a boat. He had his head literally lopped off. And there's various different stories that can be found and read about, but in any case, his victims all suffered horrible fates at the hands of Coppinger, and that's where he gained his name, the cruel Coppinger. And what would any pirate be without his own vessel? And his had the very apt name of the Black Prince. So with his luck beginning to run out, the excise men were closing in around him, and with every story of bad guys, there's always people willing to shop him in or tell the authorities where he is and who he is. He decided to make his getaway, and that is pretty dramatic, just like his arrival. So in dramatic fashion, he was seen running along the rocks at the bottom of the cliff, heading out to Gull Rock, which is the rock that disappears, just peters off into the sea. From there, he climbed into a small boat and rowed out to his waiting vessel. His vessel then set sail and turned out to sea, but as it did so, a storm started to brew on the horizon, and very shortly a violent storm and tempest arose, and it took this boat totally to the bottom of the sea, capsizing it, killing everybody on board, including the cruel Coppinger. Local legends say that it was Coppinger's victims that brought the storm down on his vessel as revenge, taking him to the bottom of the sea to a watery grave in revenge and retaliation for claiming their lives. It is also said if you stand on top of the cliffs on a stormy, wave-swept night, you too can hear the screams and the cries of all Coppinger's victims as they scream for help. Well, in a nearby church there are some records that exist that shows an Anne Hamlin and a Daniel Coppinger that were married in the local church in 1793. But evidence is very sparse, and is this just a made up story by smugglers and pirates and wreckers themselves to keep, people from not being nosy and looking around the area where they were plying their evil trade? There was always very little evidence or any way of getting people to justice over wrecking, smuggling and piracy, because quite simply that old saying, dead men tell no tales, really did apply to this evil trade. And there were very few people that did actually survive if they were wrecked, or there were very few people that would testify in an open court against these people, feeling they would suffer retribution for it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little tale from this local beach, and it's a fascinating local history, folklore and legend that has grown up around it. But as you can see, light is beginning to fade. I'm taking a little stroll through a woodland, and I know my day's coming to an end. I will very, very quickly be heading down the coast to another beach. This is kind of a little bit of a relaxing trip for me, It's not a serious hike. I'm just out for a walk, and I'm just out to actually just enjoy the sheer fact of being out and being able to walk in nature and just feel it. And I'm just loving and feeling every single moment of it. This woodland is in stark contrast to the coastline, with all the noise of the water, crashing waves and the dramatic scenery. This is calming, it's quiet, it's scenic. You can feel it at ease and peace. I do like the coastline because it brings out that something you don't get in a woodland, but you can't escape the fact when you come back into a woodland, you do feel slightly calmer. I am a lifelong surfer, and I always will be as long as I'm physically able to do it. I'm always drawn to the ocean, and I just actually love the energy and the feeling I get from being in and around it. I'm not the only one. These days surfing is an extremely popular hobby and pastime. I dare say I'm beginning to look old and not so cool as I used to when I'm riding a surfboard, but those days have long since gone for me, and it's more about the actual feeling of the ride and feeling that where the energy of the ocean allows you to actually enjoy the fact you're in nature yet again. I have driven this particular road more times than I care to remember, and I'm always filled with excitement and anticipation as I come up around this corner, because it will be my first glimpse of the ocean. And will I have good waves to ride, or will it be a total disaster and I've wasted my time? And before me now, I'm usually starting to either think to myself, I'm going to have a good day, or I need to turn around and go home and do something more productive. And as I come down here and I'm thinking about surf, my wife will sometimes casually just say to me, she's just got this special connection to this headland down here because one of her friends that passed away had her ashes scattered there. And so, you know, while I may be excited, my wife always has that little thought running through her mind that one of her friends, is eternally here on that headland. It's always windy here, and you can see those waves rolling in on those rocks there. And you've got the skies above it. It looks almost biblical. It looks like there's a big storm coming. But there's no storm. It's just sea fog and mist starting to come in off the Atlantic. Now, there's a nice little seat monument here, but all along this headland there are seats with people's names on it, where families have put a seat in commemoration to a loved one. And in the summer, not the winter, because it's possibly the most horrendous place due to the wind and rain and gales that sweep in off the Atlantic to come to. But in the summer it's perfectly nice just to sit here and while away some time and stare out to sea. And straight out there, if you was to just keep going, would be the Americas, and sweeping around to the North Cornish coastline and back down to Widmouth. Well, my day's coming to an end here, so I'm going to scamper off home before I lose total light, all my light that's available to me. So I hope you enjoyed just a little look around this Cornish coastline with a little story of piracy, smuggling and wrecking. And stay safe, all the best. This is Andy, and I hope to catch you guys out on the trail.